Good. Well, welcome everybody to the Paladin Biz Coach webinar series. I'm Charles Owen. I'm going to be your host today. I appreciate you guys logging in and taking your time. This shouldn't take long. There's some very exciting features that we have that I'll be presenting today that I'm anxious to show you. So I'll just get into it. My name is, as I mentioned, Charles Owen. My role at Paladin is manage business alliances for the company. Been with Paladin about 9 years. And today's topic is knowing about or understanding the new features coming out in the general release. Some of you may have this release right now. I don't know if you do or not, but it's being rolled out across the United States, and we do that in waves with each section of the country. We just kind of go and hit everybody over a couple of week period, so we don't hit everybody at one time. All right, the goal of this webinar series is to give you advanced training and knowledge on how Paladin works best practices, new features that are coming out, and that sort of thing. Some of the features that I'll be talking about today have already had an actual presentation, dedicated presentation. One of them is the F4 discounting button in Invoicing Quote, and that I did last week. So I'll be touching on that a little bit. I have Chad here to assist me. He's going to be looking for questions. I've already seen hands up, so I know that you folks can hear me and see me, and if not, please send a note to Chad. And of course, if you didn't hear that, then you wouldn't be able to do that. So, but I know you can hear me because I have others in the building that can hear me. So this recording will be available after the fact as well at Paladin Point of Sale /webinars. That's Paladin Point of Sale spelled out /webinars plural. All right, so let's get into it. So I'm going to highlight some of the features, not all the features, but some of the features and some of the more exciting features in version 9737 of Paladin Point of Sale. And you can see that version number if you click on the Help button on the very top of the menu screen in Paladin, and a box will appear, and in that box you're going to have several sets of number, and the last 4 digits prior to the .1 is going to be 9737 or something else. If it's something else, you don't have these features yet. If you have 9737, you do have these features. We're going to be talking about a lot of the features that have been changed in invoicing quoting, in the setup screens, reports, EDI and integration, as well as maintenance and lumber and building material features. All right, so let's kick this off with the first feature I'll talk about is gift receipts are now available. So when you generate an invoice at the very end where it comes up and gives you an opportunity to duplicate receipts or get a full sheet, delivery copy, yard order, or email receipt, you now have the choice to press number 7 to get a gift receipt. That is a receipt that looks identical to the others. There's just no cost information or price information on it. So that is hidden from the receipt, but yet if a giftee brought that in and wanted to exchange it or return it, cashier can scan the bottom of that invoice and it'll call up the original invoice and they can make changes to that if they like. So that's the gift receipts are available at checkout now. Second feature is credit balances are now displayed at checkout. This is really cool. If somebody comes in and gets a store credit, this probably isn't going to be one of your house accounts, but it could be a house account. But primarily if you're returning money to people but you're not doing it in the way of cash, you might want to either give them a gift card and put all the return onto a loaded gift card with that, or you can put it on as store credit. To add it to store credit, when they're checking out and you give them a negative amount, you can select account. So you can put it under the customer account. Even though they're not a house account or a charge account customer, you still have the capability to put a credit balance onto their account. And that is pretty cool. It does show here, so the cashier will see as they're checking the customer out that, oh, there's credit on an account that they can use, so they'll just select that customer account as the payment option, exhaust that if they might, and then add another payment type of maybe either credit card or cash or check. All right, so that's displayed right there at the checkout screen under Customer Messages. Another feature we have is we now have a restricted class that can be applied to any item at checkout. And this restricted class can be created by you. Now we used to do this exact same thing for the pharmacy side. We actually still do, and it's under the Stop Meth program. So if the customer was coming in buying pseudoephedrine or iodine or other ingredients that can make meth products, we would warn them and require the ID information. Well, we've extended that into all the other retailing types like hardware and the like. So you can set up an item, for example, in some stores, in some states, it's required if you're selling spray paint to capture the person's ID to make sure that they are of age to buy spray paint so they're not tagging everything out there. And so all you do is create a class, and that class you can call restricted or paint or whatever you want to call it. And then on those items that you're selling, you can go into the inventory and you set that class up in either the third class or second or third class positions, because you have up to 3 classes you can apply to any inventory item. And then in your setup screen under the company tab, you would set up the restricted class as you see here. You can see the check, it says enabled restricted class number is 100. So now any product that has a class 100 is going to spawn this particular screen at checkout where it says additional customer information is required. Now at this point where you see the ID, next to the ID is a little license, driver's license. That means it's a scannable spot where you can scan the back of the driver's license, and it just populates all the fields. Now there is a caveat with this. You have to have a barcode scanner that is a 2D barcode scanner. We do offer them today. We try to sell them solely from a few months back until now. We're trying to include 2Ds with every sale unless somebody really doesn't have a requirement for it. It's not that much more than a 1D. I think it's $100 more than the 1D scanner, but it's really convenient, and it enables you to scan and capture all this information. It defines the type of ID, whether it's a military ID, a driver's license, or what have you, and populates most of the data. The only data it's not going to find on there is the phone number, because you won't find those on the back of the driver's licenses. Now there might be 2 barcodes on the back of driver's license. One is the stereotypical, barcode. Ignore that one. It's the other one that's more like a QR code. Next feature. Now this one, I actually did the webinar last week on this if you want to get more detailed information about this, but this is a cool feature. The invoice, at Invoicing Quote, the F4 button is a discount button. That discount button lets you apply a percentage to any item on that invoice or the entire invoice. Now before, when you changed the price, you physically went in and changed the price of an item. It respects the minimum margin. But if you use the F4 button previously, it would require a manager's approval if you set it up to do so, but it would not necessarily respect the minimum margin. So this is a very nice feature enhancement that enables you to protect your margins at checkout. In addition, other items like fasteners and or other things like prescriptions, you could not discount using this F4 button. If you tried to, it would go back to the inventory and say, oh, this is a 0 price item, because it's a dump SKU. And that being a 0 price item, if you tried to discount it, it says it's 0. You can't discount anything beyond 0. So now, if you put a price in, let's say you put F for fasteners, and you go over and you say, I've got 3 at 50 cents each, so you put 50 cents in there. Now you can apply the F4 discount to that if it is checked in your system. You can apply that F4 discount, and it will add a percentage to that 50 cents that you just put in the price field. Kind of a cool feature. Now, in the setup, you have to go to the Invoice tab. Now, there's a new Invoice tab. Invoice used to fall under the Company tab in Setup. So if you go File, Setup, Company, you would today, if you don't have this version, you're going to still have the invoice components under that company tab. But there are so many of them, we broke it out into its own tab. So now there is a separate tab that's called Invoice and in parentheses Store. So now with this new version, 9737, you'll have a separate tab for Invoice. And that's kind of convenient because now you've got everything that you can change and to affect the checkout process is in one spot. Okay, if you want more information about this, watch my video from last week, watch the webinar from last week. All right, the other feature is view the last 100 invoices in Paladin. So this is available for each terminal. So every point of sale terminal, you can go into the history tab under invoicing and quoting. So you're going to invoice and quoting, hit the F1 for advanced lookup. After that, at the very top, you've got 4 tabs. One of them is history. If you go to the history button, we've added a new radio button here. Under special order, you'll see it says invoice reprint. If you select invoice reprint, it will call up the last 100 transactions that were done on that particular terminal in chronological order. Now, you know you can look up under history, you can look up prior invoices, you can look up part numbers that were sold in prior invoices, part numbers for a particular customer that were purchased before. Now we have an opportunity just to go back and say, hey, give me the last invoice I printed. So you just go to this invoice reprint, boom, you got the top one, double click on it, you're there, it's already printing the receipt. Next feature, special order enhancements. So we have a very comprehensive special ordering system that kind of takes everything from cradle to grave when it pertains to creating special orders. It creates a purchase order for it. It adds it to the inventory. It earmarks it as never being orderable again. It does a number of things that enables you to store that particular special order and tie it to a customer record. And it puts the item on hold in the inventory. It does a lot of really cool things. Well, one thing that we got the request for was to incorporate in that process being able to take a deposit without having to make that a separate transaction. So now in your Setup Company tab under Special Orders, there's a new area here where you can set a default for a percentage of the for collecting a deposit on that special order. So that deposit then shows up on the terminal at the end of the special order process, and it just pops up and it says, hey, you asked for 25%, is $245.81 okay? And you can say, no, I'm just going to make that $250 rounded up. That's fine. So you can put $250 under other. Or you can set it to a 50% or even 100%. And what it does is just processes the transaction right there, enables you to collect the money, however, whether it's check, credit card, or cash, and then that credit will be on account as a deposit for that customer's special order product. Really, really helps to expedite the special order process. Now, on the receiving side, when you're receiving special orders in, we didn't used to have an opportunity to add freight costs, but now you can add freight costs to the special order. And that's nice because that may or may not, you know, obviously it's gonna mess with your margin and your profit, so you want to track that. So with special orders, we enable you to collect a freight cost, and if you like, you can pass that on to the customers. So that was special orders. Next, and this is more for the lumber building materials, but there's a lot of hardware stores out there that want to sell particular items by the foot. So if you have molding, crown molding or something, and the contractor or the homeowner needs 100 feet of it, then you got to figure out how many pieces you need and what sizes they are. So this enables you to put in the number of pieces and the length of those pieces. So that's always been in there. It's kind of been hard to find. It's the Control K is what spawns that at checkout. But we've actually enhanced this to where you don't have to necessarily do Control K. You can go up to the top now under File, and then under File there are two options. One is to open up the footage calculator, and the other is to open up the Profit Analyst. And also before, when you created this footage, when you use this footage calculator, it would pretty much hard code that in with that particular line item. And if you wanted to edit it, you would have to add another line, remove that other one, and put in your different sizes. Now it's editable. So you can edit the number of pieces or the length for each of these orders, and that's going to enable you to maintain what you already had in that invoice and just make changes to it. In addition, before, when you either press Control K or went to the, or now when you go to File Footage Calculator, you were required to be on the actual quantity line. You can be anywhere on the line now. You just need to highlight the item that you wish to either edit or add these components to, or these pieces and lengths to, and that will open up the footage calculator and enable you to put these items in. In addition to having this functionality of invoicing, we were asked to add this functionality to the purchase order. So now you can create a purchase order and you can put different lengths in. So if you're ordering custom metal pieces or wood and it's going to a particular wholesaler or supplier, you now can open up that footage calculator in the purchase order, add those lengths, and submit that on to the supplier. And what this does is it identifies it to the supplier and also to the yard. It breaks out the number of pieces in the bottom in a note section, so it shows all the pieces and their lengths in the notes. All right, so that's a footage calculator. Next, so we've always had kits, or the availability has been in there for several years, but we had a couple of requests to make the kits where you can update the prices. Now, when you build a kit, it's pretty much at a set price. You're building the kit, you're at a kit price. The reason why you build a kit is to, number one, expedite adding multiple items into the system, provide promotions and offers that contain certain things, like the top one that we see here under the grill offer is you're selling the grill for full price, but you're giving away all the utensils, all the, maybe a cover, and maybe some barbecue sauce or something you're throwing in. That enables you to just use one SKU to populate all those items. So what if the price changes on that item? Well, you can now go in, if you like, and update the kit prices. Now, you might have kits where you have 500 items in the kit. It's a kit for building a storage shed or doghouse or what have you. Or it could be compounding of OTC items on the pharmacy side. You can build these kits, and now with just a push of a button, you have to push on the button that says Update Retails or Update Retails. It'll give you an option and show you the difference in the retail. In this case, it's $3.25 for the barbecue, but all the other products are free. So it's saying, hey, if you wanted to add all these retails, it could be as much as $475.55. At this point, you can either elect to save changes or to not save changes and just move on. You can also preview it as well before you actually commit to it. So updating of kits, updating the kit prices is now an available function. All right, there's a couple other things under Invoicing Quote. I really didn't have a screen for these, so I'm just going to talk and speak to these. One is on-hold items can now have negative stock on hand values. Prior to this version, you could not save a negative number to an on-hold item. For obvious reasons, we didn't do that. One is, it's going to change the stock on hand in your inventory as a -1. So what that's going to do is add it to your stock, right? So it's kind of weird, but we had the request to enable negative numbers to be capable of to be stored as an on-hold item, and now we do have that capability. So you can put a negative number, store it as an on-hold, and it's going to respect that. Next, Profit Analyst. So if you haven't used this feature yet, you have to. It is the coolest thing for owners and managers. You definitely don't want to give this capability to your cashiers. But Profit Analyst is something that is invoked in the Invoicing Quote stage. So you've got all the items, all the different items in your invoice. And let's say you want to just see what you're making profit-wise out of this deal. How much is your margin? What are your costs? That sort of thing. You just do Alt-A for Profit Analyst, and it pulls up this screen, or you can go up on top of the screen where it goes File. Where you see the footage calculator, Profit Analyst will be right underneath it, so you can press the File button on the top of the screen. That will pull up the Profit Analyst. Now, prior to this, if you had a dump SKU in there, it wouldn't necessarily know what kind of percentages or margins, so it would say, hey, this is 100% margin because you're selling it for, oh, you're buying it for $0 and you're selling it for $2. Well, now we actually look at that dump SKU, and if it's got a reference margin in the inventory, so let's say well, on my fasteners I make about 55%, so I'm just going to put 55% margin as a fixed margin for my fasteners. Well, now in invoicing, when you invoke this Profit Analyst, it's actually going to respect that 55% margin, and it will show the costs and the profit accordingly. All right. Next, on our ACE stores, as it pertains to collecting and updating incomplete ACE rewards information, it used to come up and this message would say, hey, you don't have enough information or information is missing. Go to AceNet, add the information, and then update their profile so that it doesn't pop with that box anymore. Well, now it's live, it's connected directly to AceNet, so when the box pops up, it gives you an opportunity to add changes, and it highlights in yellow what needs to be added. So if their phone number isn't in there or if their address is incorrect, you can update that right in Paladin, right at checkout, right when you have the customer in front of you, and then hit save, and then it takes care of that. All right, so on the setup side, so that was all Invoicing Quote. Now on the setup side, there's been a couple of changes that we've added and some really, really cool ones. This one is you can now set minimum margin by department. This is one of my favorite options in here because before you would set a minimum margin across the board, and it would have to be kind of a high minimum margin because you want to accommodate those that you're making a margin of 75% and those that you're making a margin of 12%, so you set it somewhere in the middle. Well, now you can be very specific and set a margin based on a department. So you can set a certain department like lumber, building materials, paint, whatever you want, and you can set a minimum margin for that particular department. Now, you are not required to do this. If you're okay with setting a minimum margin across the board, that's cool. That still exists. But you now have the ability to go into department and make a change to any department. So now it would affect just that one department. Now, this comes into play from multiple areas. One, the F4 button that we just talked about for adding discounts at checkout. It can respect the minimum margin that you have in there. When you generate prompt payment prompt payment discounts respect minimum margin, and oh gosh, there's another area that respects minimum margin, but it's yeah, I forget what it is, but it's a nice thing to have. Having the ability to change it at the department level is just going to assure. Pricing plans and sale lists, of course, they respect minimum margin. And thank you all who are thinking that out there because it just made it to my brain telepathically, of course. So the other thing that you can do under the departments is now you can export that and into an Excel spreadsheet. If you wish, you can optionally print that. So we give you the capability now to export all the information in your setup tab for that department and print it out if you wish. All right, now in addition to that, we've also added an export button for your employee listing. So if you have an employee security listing, it can now export that to Excel, so now you can see it, manipulate it, and print it if you like on a hard copy. So that's available as well. So these are both setup functions, and if you go into, at the very top, File, Setup, you'll see these tabs. The tab for employee is listed out and broken out, and so is department. All right, to continue, we have, oh, great. My PowerPoint is restarting here. Interesting. The next feature, which I will jump to here, is Wait for it. Nothing's fast about PowerPoint. All right, here we go. Next feature is pricing plans now support. So years ago when we first added pricing plans in there, they supported a range of sales. So you can have a sale list with items in it, and that could be a range of different sales. And you can now affect all of those items in those sales lists right here in the pricing plans. In addition to that, we had a department range you can put in there, and also a supplier range. Then a few years back, we added a class, the ability to really refine the sale down to a particular class of item. And now we've even refined it further through fine lines to a subclass. So you can define a sale of not just a department, not just a class, but also as far down as a subclass. If you have a subclass, it is tied to a class, but you don't have to set a department or a class, you just set the subclass. So that has been added to the pricing plan. So I hope some of you find that effective. Helps you really narrow down what you're going to put on sale. All right, that's in the Setup tab. Now this is on the reports. Now this is kind of goes against the Paladin religion here to have an area where you can do replenishment ordering, but because why? Well, because we push suggested ordering. We just think it's the best way to run your store. Suggested ordering will help you get optimal stocking supply, which accomplishes two goals. We all know what those goals are, right? Get rid of the outs, reduce the outs, and also bring the inventory down to something reasonable and getting rid of all the overstock. Those two areas of the system are accomplished through our suggested ordering process. But now, in those transitionary periods, we got the request from many customers that are moving over to Paladin. They say, look, we've always done replenishment sales. As we transition to suggested ordering, can we just use what has been sold previously and just create a purchase order for that? So we have done just that. We added a feature under the reports for items sold report, which is under the history tab. You'll find under inventory history, I believe, you'll find create a working purchase order from this data. It will create a working purchase order, and it's going to verbatim, whatever you sold, put that on the PO. So cool feature for some of you out there that are making that transition to suggested ordering. I really hope that you just use it to get to the point where you're doing suggested ordering. If you want to learn how to do that, Unraveling the Mysteries of Inventory Part 1, 2, and 3 webinar series is a good one to go to. All right, EDI integrations, we're just winding down here with a couple more integrations. We've added Bostwick Braun, we've added HDW. These are two hardware suppliers. We've also added an integration to the CompuSolve RX system for the pharmacy systems out there. If you're using CompuSolve today, we have an integration to that. It's a integration that we wrote along with Dennis and his team there. All right, lastly, EDI reporting now applies supplier ratio to receiving costs. So that's an option that you have in the system. All right, and then second to last, and I'm saving the best for last, so bear with me. I know I'm just running a minute or two over. On the maintenance file, you now have an ability to import invoices. So if you have another system that's doing another function in your store and you want to capture that data and bring it into Paladin to maintain the inventory control, you can do that now. So if you're selling items on the web, for example, you can now take those web orders and pull them into Paladin, and it's going to properly deduct the inventory if you're selling items and distributing it from your store. So not a feature for everybody, but we've added a new tab just called Invoices, very simply Invoices. To make it confusing, there's another tab after that called Invoice Import. That's not the one this is, it's just Invoices. All right, Invoice Import is something different. I'm sure we'll change the name to lessen the confusion. But if you have any questions on this and want further information, feel free to contact me or somebody in support. All right, best for last. Now this really, it's kind of billed as a lumber building material feature, but there's actually a lot more to it than that. We've added the ability to calculate 1,000 board foot by just typing in the dimensions of the lumber and enabling you to, upon receiving items and ordering items, you can order and receive by 1,000 board foot costs, and it will make the conversion and calculation and give you the actual average and market cost of your individual items, and as well as maintain a sale price based on a margin, if you wish. All right, so that not only is available for 1,000 board foot, but also 1,000 square foot, also tons, and then order multiples, which we've always had, but this kind of simplifies the process. This is a new screen. You're going to see it in your pricing tab within inventory. If you are not involved, or if you don't care about this, you could ignore it. Everything else is the same. But if you have items that you wish to order by board foot or square foot or tons, you can now do that. And this goes out multiple decimal points. So the on the receiving side, you can actually receive out 3 decimal points, and on the calculation side, it's actually going 10 decimal points out. So it enables you to get down to that finite cost and retail price that you want to sell these items for. That's it for today, you guys. A detailed of these descriptions can be found on your features and fixes screen, which is that splash screen that comes up in Paladin. And so you can search for that as well. So if you want to search for a particular item, you can do that. And then also you can go to knowledge base for these features. Now, we're feverishly adding all of these features in detail and best practices, enabling these features to the system. So if you don't find something, if you want information, again, contact support during regular business hours, you'll be good to go. A broadcast, a rebroadcast of this can be seen at paladinpointogsale.com/webinars. And we have another webinar scheduled for next week. And I'm going to turn this over to Chad now to hopefully, Chad, you can tell everybody what's coming next week, and also if there's any questions here.
There is no questions at this time, and I'm not 100% sure on what webinar is next week. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, you can check, I think. So I want to thank everybody for your participation today. I hope this was helpful to you. I hope you enjoyed some of these new features and are able to use them.
Charles, we have a question as to when these features will happen. Can you talk a little bit more as to the rollout time?
As far as rollout time, it's been rolled out. It is being rolled out. It is in the process of being rolled out right now. So as I mentioned, we hit the states in waves. So if you just took the map of the United States and you put 6 or 5 slices down it to divide it into 6 different territories, that's how we roll this out. So it first hits the West Coast, and then Midwest, and then East, and it kind of goes across that way. And that's over a couple of 3-week period or so. And so we don't like to hit everybody at once. We can kind of catch things if we have to that we might need to alter. But that is how it's going out. So again, if you go to the Help menu at the very top of Paladin and look at the About, it'll tell you what version you're on. If you're not on 97.37.1, then you don't have the new update yet. If you're interested and want to get the new update sooner than later, I would caution you not to, inundate service for calls to custom update you, but that function and that is available if you desperately needed one of these features right away. All right. So any news from next week's, Chad?
A few more questions here. My understanding is that the customer merge will be available through Paladin support. Is that going to be a feature that is released to our customers, and if so, when?
That's a great question. Yes, and I actually didn't mention that because that's been out for a while. We kind of hid it out there, but there are times when if you create 2 customer records, you have the capability through our support team to merge those records together, maintaining all of the history and purchases of both of those profiles into one. It's extremely effective for pharmacies where they have integration and the system may have created duplicate records for whatever reason. That is available. Just contact support. They can clean that up for you. We can also do it in batch as well. So if you have hundreds of them, we can literally do it in minutes as opposed to hours or days. That's the same with inventory. We also have the capability to merge inventory items. So if you have two items where you have all this rich content and data from past history and you want to merge the two together because it's, for all intents and purposes, the same item, you have that capability as well. And that is through Paladin Tech Support. Now, we're still vetting these features because they're kind of all or nothing. Once you make that commitment, there's no undoing it. It has changed the record forever, and we're quite sensitive about this, particularly for pharmacies. It's if we don't merge the right records together, it can be a real problem from an audit perspective. So, because we're going back and we're changing time, we're just making sure that this is ironclad before we give this process to our customers. But it will be there, and it will not be there on this update. I'm pushing for next update. I think that'll be enough time to vet this, but we'll know for sure as we get closer to the next release, which should be in about another 2 to 3 months.
Excellent. The next Paladin webinar is yet to be scheduled, so we're going to have to keep an eye on your feature fixes box for the next release of what we're going to be talking about.
Okay, well, I do have one thing to add then. On April 12th, I know, which is a Tuesday, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I am doing another webinar specifically on the lumber and building materials features. So if any of you LBM folks out there, you want to see all the features that are available, including the new MBF 1,000 board foot calculations, that will be April 12th. So with that, any other questions?
No, sir.
Well, I appreciate everybody's time. I'm sorry it took a little bit longer than normal, but I thank you again for your time. I'm going to sign off at this point. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.